Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is a special call meeting of the Commissioners Court of Hood County. It is July 31st. It's 9 a.m. We're in the Ralph H. Walton Jr. Justice Center, Central Jury Room at 1200 West Pearl Street, Granbury, Texas. Today we're pleased to have with us once again Pastor Raspberry here, so to lead us in the invocation. Thank you.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for the privilege that we have to come together and support our community. Father, we ask that you be with each commissioner and each community employee. Father, we ask that you give them wisdom and discernment as they make the decisions that concern our community today, Lord. And Father, I pray protection over them, protection over their families, and Father, we thank you for the sacrifices that they make each day. Father, we ask that you give wisdom and discernment as decisions are made. We ask that unity, peace, reign over this time, Lord. Father, we just ask that your will be done and that you're glorified. Father, we just praise you and we just thank you, Lord, for all the wonderful blessings that you give us. And Father, we just lift this time up to you, Lord, and we ask that you bless it and you anoint it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me in the pledge to the United States of America.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the pledge for the great state of Texas.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge
Allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, do we have any public participation forms? You're on time. What's the deal, Miss Lang?
Well, usually when the agenda item starts, you have to turn in before the agenda item.
Well, we haven't gotten to, I haven't even called the item yet. Okay, this is the business that will be discussed here and consider for approval to discuss and take appropriate action as relates to the Hood Central Appraisal District 2024 budget adopted by the HCAD Board of Directors July 19, 2023. Okay, you put it on the agenda, Commissioner Samuelson.
Yes, I attended the budget meeting on the 19th, and there was quite a bit of discussion about the items on the agenda. And one of the things that was brought to our attention is that we, as the court, need to take action on whether we approve or not the budget. So I just took the initiative, since we were going to have a budget workshop anyway, to make it a special meeting so that we could take that action. And in case any of the other folks on the court had something to say about it, or wanted to make a motion of any kind, I just wanted to have it on there so that we could make the motion if we needed to. So that's it for me.
Anybody else? Ms. Kidd, do you have anything to say?
I've registered what they sent for.
Okay.
I received their information and I have included it in the 2024 budget.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'd like to hear, do we have any public comments?
Yes, I'm not sorry.
Oh. Sorry.
No, that's about it.
Okay. I mean, we did get a letter from a citizen and went through some various things that I think are really pointed out some things that we need to consider. Has everyone had a chance to read that letter that we received?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Read it last night and this morning.
Mr. Huss, would you like to address this? You're talking about the letter from Richard Huss?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you fill out a public participation form?
Sure, I did not.
Well, since you wrote the letter, and it's Commissioner Samuelson, do you want to speak on it, your letter?
If the court has read the letter, I think it would be redundant for me to speak, but if you wish me to, I will fill out a speaker form.
No, that's all right. You don't have to. If you don't want to speak, and you saying this letter says it all, is what you're telling me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. That's fine. All right.
Just kind of overall to let the public know what is concerning to me and Mr. Huffs and maybe other people that have looked at the budget over the years with the appraisal district. To my understanding of the appraisal district, they are funded by the taxing entities for operating. And as we have looked through the budget, I looked through the budget as it was presented in the budget hearing the other day, there's, over the last few years, the operating expenses have been less than what was funded by the taxing entities. And that balance has accumulated over time. And to me, that is, okay, if you don't need the amount of money that the taxing entities are providing, then that money should go back to the taxing entities and then back to the taxpayers. So that's kind of the discussion today is, does this budget, the revenues exceed expenses by $267,000, and then there's also a balance that's been carried forward over the years as the appraisal district has, which, I mean, that's a good thing. If you're being efficient and not using the money that was allocated, that's good, but keep your budget low. Don't charge the taxing entities for money that you're not going to be using, and return that money to the taxing entity so that we can return it to the taxpayer. So that's it at a high level. There's a lot more detail to that we can get into, but we want to hear from anyone in the public.
Well, we got Rick Fry here today that's wants to speak about item number 1.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity. I am your representative on the Appraisal District Board. We're in a year of transition because we have moved forward, and we're in the process of starting interviews probably in a couple of weeks for a chief appraiser. Our chief appraiser, we had some issues. We had placed him on probation with some target things that he needed to accomplish to remain in that position, and he chose to resign, and so that position's open, and we now have an interim. And this budget is reflective of some of the things that we recognized as a board. Our board is new in the fact that about 19 months ago, we changed positions, and we only have one remaining member that was previous to that board, so we were all brand new. And it's been a learning curve. I mean, you go into an organization and you really don't know your place, and you kind of have to get grounded on how it operates, what the efficiencies and deficiencies are. And that's what we've been trying to iron out as a board, and do it in respect to the service that we provide, which is a service to assess the property values, to collect those taxes and make sure that they're given to you in an efficient manner so you can budget and do the work of the county, the city, the school districts that we collect taxes for. One of the issues that came up the other night was the fact that we had budgeted for an assistant or a deputy chief appraiser. There was a motion, it died for lack of second, and I'm going to explain my position on that. In the fact that because we don't have a full-time chief appraiser, the former chief appraiser became ill. He was sent to the hospital. He was in ICU. The report to the board was he was unresponsive, and so I went to see Meg, who is our administrative manager, and I said, okay, where are we? You know, who's in charge? Well, not really anybody. You know, Susan takes care of the office, I take care of this, and our appraiser that is the head appraiser, she kind of takes care of that. And I said, well, if somebody comes in with a big problem, who handles it? Well, you know, and so we got this nebulous thought that we didn't have anybody in charge. Moving forward, we were trying to identify how do we correct the situation. So if we have a vacation, an illness, anything, absence, how do we respond? Who do we go? Who's our go-to person to take care of you and all the citizens of Hood County? We didn't have that. It was very fragmented. So to give in the director of appraisal, which in a lot of districts assumes that responsibility, told us, I don't want to deal with that. And so we're kind of like, how do we fix this? How do we have a second in command? As a board, we hire one person, and that's the chief appraiser. We have no authority over anybody else in that building. So we felt, several of us felt, it was incumbent that we fix that issue. And now that we have the opportunity to hire a chief appraiser, I voted to leave it in because I want them to have the flexibility to organize the district to be as efficient as possible. And if there is an absence, we have somebody that steps forward and we know that person is the go-to person. They're going to make sure that there's continuity of business and that we're not going to miss a beat. And we didn't have that. And that's the reason that position was put in there, for no other reason. We recently had an appraiser who has been very ill pass away. So we have an opening. Are we going to fill all those positions? I don't think so. I think we'll get somebody in there. They're going to look at it. They're going to make their own decisions, and we're going to try to look for some leadership, some knowledge, and a dedication to be as efficient as we possibly can. On the balance that we've been, you know, the county has Fund 55, and it's sort of the capital so that when y'all have a project or something comes up, y'all can go to that fund and you can fund some things. We looked at that balance sort of like Fund 55. We are not compliant with ADA as far as access, as far as restrooms, as far as there's other. We've looked at buildings. I personally think that we need to be as thoughtful and as frugal, but we've got to get the job done. We need to have, you know, restroom facilities for people that come to our building and sometimes have to wait on appraisers or whatever. That needs to happen. There's several things that we need to do in efficiency-wise. It's been brought up that we could be more efficient if we had better software and handheld devices so we don't duplicate work from the field back to the office. All those things take funding. If you feel like that we should refund those funds, I'm not against it. I just think you need to know that if we have the flexibility, we might be able to act sooner rather than later on gaining those efficiencies and becoming more responsive to our general public, our taxpayers, and the entities we serve. And that's just my philosophy. And we have a very good board, probably the most professional that's been around for a long time. It's been one of those things where there are things happening on the other side of the house as far as market value we can't control. I can't get involved in. It's against the law for me as a director on one side of the house to do anything about the ARB or your value. So I can't do anything about that. Do I think there's some problems? I've witnessed the problems. I get phone calls about the problems. We need to be better at what we do. We need to be very professional about our responsive to the public, and we need to be better managed. And that's what we're looking to when we start hiring this chief appraiser, is that we want to go from here to up here somewhere as far as how we operate, how you perceive the district, rather than a liability. I think we're looked at it sometimes. We want to be looked at as that we're just another asset that helps us do business every day in all of our entities, and that's what we're after. And so, but I appreciate the time. Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So the director of appraisals that you said you asked, and she said, or he or whoever the person is, didn't want to step up and do that. Okay,
Exactly.
I'm looking at the budget. That person's been at the appraisal district for 20 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And is in the budget at $96,000.
Correct.
So to me, that's a lot of, the salary is commensurate with that responsibility. I don't understand why a person says, that's not my job.
I can't argue that. I'll just say that we hire the chief appraiser, and that's our only one employee that we have influence over. And those are the kinds of questions and interviews that we're going to ask that person. How would you address that very issue and other issues that we're all making a list of when we ask questions? How are you going to organize the district? How do you see it being more efficient? How do you feel about the level of technology? Where do you see us next year, 5 years from now? What kind of planning do you do? What kind of planning have you been involved in?
Yeah, I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed.
I agree.
And then also, do you have an estimate of the amount that the software that you're talking about would cost?
I heard the other night for the first time, it was somewhere, I think the number they threw out was like $570,000 for the software. And then you're talking about some handheld devices, which aren't terribly expensive, but you're talking about probably $10,000 to $15,000 plus on some handheld devices. So you're talking about, $650,000 probably to convert to a more modern system. And if that makes us more efficient, and we have one less appraiser, or we don't have to hire an appraiser, in about 3 years or 4 years of salary with all the benefits, we're going to get close to getting that money back. So I think it's a planning thing.
Yeah, I was looking for that as part of this budget, as far as going forward with getting that software, showing a cost benefit, a return on investment, when that would be, to kind of understand how.
That's the void in our leadership of a chief appraiser position that we're trying to address, because we're as frustrated as anybody about, I will tell you that the day that I found out that our former chief appraiser was in a hospital unresponsive, I went and I said, well, this ought to be a better year, because we raised the market value so much the previous year, maybe it won't be so bad. And one of them kind of went white and said, well, we mailed out 5,000 notices yesterday, and the average is 22%. It was the first time I'd heard it. So we were flying blind. We weren't getting information. Those are the things that we hope through the due diligence, when we hire somebody, we get somebody that's a good communicator to you and to us, that we have somebody who's a planner, so those things are thought out and put in the budget. The budget, to me, is a plan for what we're going to do within a year. Just like your budget, you're looking at, we're going to spend this money, and this is our connection to the public of how we're going to spend the funds that are allocated. It should be the same thing with us, just like it is for you, except it ought to be reflective to you how the money that we're collecting from you to do our job is taken care of. And that's what we're after. I mean, that's everybody. That's on everybody's radar. That's the kind of person we need: a good communicator, a planner who looks for efficiencies, who runs a tight ship, where everybody knows their place and what they need to do. The job descriptions are tightened up, and if we have somebody that says, "Well, I'm not going to do that," because that's not an answer. It's like, we're paying you to do this job.
Right.
And if you don't want to do that job, then maybe we ought to look for a position in an organization where you don't have to worry about that, but it will be reflective, your salary will be reflective of whatever responsibility we give you.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay? Any questions?
I have one more question. On the software, the $500,000, is that, would that all be in 1 year, or is that as the years go? Like-
This is another planning issue, and I don't know anything about it other than what I've been told secondhand. Some of these software companies have like a 3 or 4 year plan where you can do it incrementally. I don't know if I don't know whether there's an interest payment involved in that. I don't know if there's an economy of paying it up front. Those are things that we need to investigate with a good chief appraiser. But there is a possibility we could take it in blocks and spread it out over several years so it's not just a one-time
Yeah,
payment.
so what I'm getting at is we wouldn't know how much to put into capital outlay
We have
for
it.
the coming year.
And see, we're like you, we approve the budget, we don't write it. And quite frankly, until Richard came on board as our interim, I think what they did is they said, well, it was this much last year, we'll go this much. I don't think that there was any planning and forethought on actual numbers, and that's distressing, I'll just tell you.
And you are familiar with the tax code 6.06 that says that money
Exactly.
should be returned if it's
And
over.
If you look at the history of the surplus funds, previously, those funds have been used to pay down the liability that we had in retirement funding, just like you have to fund the county employees in there. And if you're behind, they want you to catch up at some point, and that's what they did with those funds. I think the last 3 or 4 years, that balance has been brought forward. I think the board was an error before in not bring that to you and say, we have a surplus of this amount, we would like to retain it and put it in this line item. And I don't think that was delineated, and I don't think it was well communicated. But that's something that, as a board, we're going to address.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else? I appreciate your time.
Okay, next speaker is Tina Brown. You pass. Then the next speaker is Mr. Eddie Rodriguez.
Good morning, Judge Maskill, Commissioner Andrews, Samuelson, Wilson, and Mr. Eagle. My name is Eddie Rodriguez. I'm here before you as a member of the Board of Directors for the Hood Central Appraisal District, a position appointed by the City Council, the School Board, and the County Commissioners. Specifically, my title is the Chairman of the Hood Central Appraisal District, selected by the HCAD Board. I'm here to provide you information about Agenda Item Number 1 in relationship to the Hood County 2024 budget. I want to provide you with the information to consider before making a decision. Every year, HCAD provides the entities with the HCAD budget. Once a budget has been executed, fulfilled, and all bills have been paid by the HCAD has a remaining fund balance. This is no different than the county, the city, or any other government agency having a fund balance. Just to be specific, the Granbury ISD has a fund balance of $30 million. The city has a fund balance of $17 million. The county has a fund balance of $24 million, which of $10 million has been unassigned, $14 million was assigned, and then you have fund balance 55, which has a total of $3 million. For us, this fund balance is similar to everyone else's fund balance. The Hood Central Appraisal District has the ability to obligate the remaining amount on capital projects or refund to the taxed entities. This is no different than what the government or the county does with Fund 55. They plan, they project, and they know what needs to be replaced, so that's what they use this funding, Fund 55 for. The Hood Central Appraisal District Board of Directors make a decision to obligate the remaining fund to the capital outlay land and building line item. This occurred in 2021, 2022, and 2023. As of date, we have approximately $1.3 million in that capital outlay fund. The intention of this fund is not to spend the money, not to spend it at all. but to obligate the money for future renovations or a new facility for the HCAD. Just like any other government entity, we are seeing growth in Hood County. The school district is facing challenges to accommodate the number of students. The county is facing the challenge of the number of inmates. The city is facing the challenge of a moratorium. We all are affected and face the challenge of 377. It affects us all. The HCAD is also facing its own challenges of growth. Office spaces that do not accommodate for the number of staff we currently have. We have moved printers, copiers to make a makeshift office. We have added stand-up cubicles to make more office space. We rent porta potties for public restrooms. HCAD does not have enough room. In addition, we can only hold one ARB board at a time. With more space, we could have an additional conference room with the flexibility to divide those rooms, and this would allow more options and additional ARB boards to be conducted at one time. This would increase the timeliness and the efficiencies of the process the HCAD Board of Directors are looking for. We're being proactive in planning and trying to provide additional space over the last several years. The HCAD Board of Directors started planning this process of a new building or renovations with the mindset of having a new DPS facility under the same project. This was a co-partnership project. This project would solve two issues: the growth to HCAD and also to help the county with the effort to bring back DPS to Granbury. Although this idea was a joint effort, the Hood Central Appraisal District would continue this project without considering DPS as an option to bring down the overall cost of the new HCAD facility. And that's not our intention, but we feel that the cost is what the issue is. Judge Massengill and the Commissioners, since this appointment of a new HCAD Board of Directors, the board has been making micro changes throughout the HCAD. Change is a process, and the process takes time. And it takes forward thinking and preparing and planning for the future. This project is an effort to accommodate the growth, support HCAD staff, and have a positive impact in our community. Give the HCAD Board of Directors the ability to move forward with the planning process of a new or renovated HCAD facility. If you have any further questions, I'm here to answer the best that I can or to get the answers for you.
Anybody have any questions?
Of course I do. Have you guys looked into, I know when we had, I think it was at a regular Commissioners Court meeting when we talked about this, and Dr. Glenn was here, and I asked about using the room that's used once a month for about 4 hours for the school board meetings. He said that room is available for any of county or Hood County meetings. We also have Annex 1, so there are places that you can hold. You don't have to have our meetings in that building. There's lots of options around the county to have those meetings. And also using the technology to work from home that the appraisers could use. I don't really, in today's world, I don't really understand why they need to be in that building, rather than if they're out in the field doing appraisals, then they're working on the appraisals usually at a computer. So if there needs to be discussions, there can always be discussions. So those are just some options. I wondered if you've looked into using some other buildings across the county for those meetings.
We have not, Ms. Commissioner Samuelson, and I'll tell you why. It's all about scheduling. You have your meeting here at the County Commissioners at 9 o'clock. Some facilities close, some facilities are open. Some facilities have their own schedule of boards and other meetings that they hold. That's within their control. It's out of our control. So what is in our control? If we can have a facility that can be broken down or subdivided into 3 different smaller sections, that will give the ability to hold multiple ARB boards and maybe at the same time hold the Board of Directors meeting. You've seen our conference room. We had 9 people or 11 people the time that you were in our Board of Directors meeting. It would have been a standing room only after that if we had any more additional people. If you increase that capacity by 10 more people, it would have been a standing room only.
Yeah. There's also school auditoriums that are available.
I understand that.
There's lots of options around the county. So I would suggest, really recommend that you look into some of those options for the taxpayers.
The reason I'm asking for the HCAD to have another board is that it not only facilitates the board, but also the ARBs. The ARBs have to be there. The staff of the HCAD has to be there as well. Then you're going to have to start traveling expenses for everybody that's traveling to these locations. That's not within, and then they're going to have to schedule all these things within the confines of whoever owns that space, whether they're having meetings. You're talking about travel pay expenses increasing and logistical nightmares to be had because of all the scheduling that has to be done. And then these schedules, these RB boards are scheduled for a reason. We're trying to be more efficient, but we're not going to be more efficient if we have to travel somewhere instead of having people meet us there. And we could do 2 ARB boards at a time if we had the capacity to do that, but we don't.
How many meetings annually are we talking about here?
Okay, so there's a time frame that these ARBs have to be done so that we can prepare the budget and prepare all the documentations. Just this year, we had 7,800 protests. 2 weeks ago, if I'm correct, we had 1,200 to go. But we're doing them at one ARB board at a time. And we're scheduling them almost back-to-back, 15 minutes. That's how much time they have, is 15 minutes. And we're having to schedule that, boom, 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 boom. And it's very taxing on everybody that's at the appraisal district, because they could go over, they could go under, we just don't know. So we have a scheduled time that everybody has to stay there. And when you have these people standing in the lobby, we don't have the facilities like Rick Fry has stated. We don't have the facilities for them to be there if they stay there for a little bit longer. We don't have the, we have the porta potties outside, but with 102 degrees on up, that's very inconvenient for everybody. And the reason we don't allow the public to use the employees' restroom is because in the past they have been vandalized. They have been left a mess. And then we have to call for on-call cleaner. We don't have a cleaner on staff. So we have to call somebody to try to come and clean that. Now the staff is out of restroom because they allowed the public to use it. And now we're trying to solve multiple issues with this HCAD. I got a couple of options for the judge and the commissioners. If you decide to for the HCAD to return the monies. My question is, how are you going to return it to the taxpayer? That's my question. And second, I would recommend that the county make a line item for HCAD expenses when it comes to this, when we do form up a resolution for a renovation or for a new facility. Put that in your budget. Keep that money that is going to be returned to y'all in that line item. Or just leave it where it's at now, in our capital outlay. It's no different than the 9 capital outlay budget items that y'all have in your budget.
So, I'm not sure you answered Commissioner Andrews' question. When did those happen?
When did what happen?
The meetings.
We don't
are all
schedule.
these meetings in like a 2-month period? I mean, you've got to get everything out and then get everything.
I will have to get back to you on the dates that they happen.
It's not all year long.
No,
it's
it's
in
not all
a
year
defined period of time, 1st of June through into July, something like that.
I'll get you the period of time.
Okay. And that's also when school is out, so the auditoriums will be available. As I said, the school board meeting room, it's a great room. There's area outside to gather, there's restrooms. That meeting, there's one school board meeting a month, and it's at night for about 4 hours. So definitely talk to Dr. Glenn. He offered it when he was here. That would be a great time. I don't really see a huge amount of scheduling since it's summertime, and also and the school board meeting is at night, so that room stays vacant 99% of the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Samuelson. My other question is, what particular line item is of concern that this Commissioners Court will disapprove the budget for?
We'll get to that in a minute. I got a question, but I can't refrain from speaking at this point. Your first question is, how do we return it to the taxpayer? Well, that's not your concern on the appraisal district. I'm going to read tax code into the record right now, section 6.06, subsection J. If the total amount of the payments made or due to be made by the taxing units participating in the appraisal district exceeds the amount actually spent or obligated to be spent during the fiscal year for which payments are made, the chief appraiser shall, not may, it says shall, credit the excess amount against each taxing unit's allocated payments for the following year, in proportion to the amount of that unit's budget allocation for the fiscal year for which the payments are made. Now, there's another sentence, but I'm going to deal with that one first. So what that's saying is that if you have a fund balance, and I've had, there's some policy arguments to be made about fund balance, and Ms. Kidd and I have discussed it over the years about what kind of fund balance you have. Should you have more or less or what have you. But this statute takes it out of the policy consideration from the appraisal district. It basically says you shall credit us next year for whatever the amount that we're supposed to put in next year. We should get a credit of any overage at that point in time. If that doesn't happen, here's the second sentence in this statute. If a taxing unit that paid the allocated amount is not allocated a portion of the district's budget for the following fiscal year, the chief appraiser shall refund to the taxing unit its proportionate share of excess funds not later than the 150th day after the end of the fiscal year for which payments were made. Now, that's the end of that statute. What that means, if you don't credit us next year, then you owe us a check for the difference. And so I sat in on a budget, your final budget meeting several years ago. And of course, at that point in time, I was just a citizen out here. Well, I still am, but I mean, I'm sitting up here on the court now. And I was absolutely, what they did is they had a $495,000 surplus. And they took that surplus and they voted to put it in their retirement. And I didn't know all the nuts and bolts beyond that, but I was outraged at the look of it, because what that, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, IMO, that sure reeks of giving incentive to have a surplus every year, a fund balance. But the way I'm reading this statute, and I'm going to, at some point, get with our county attorney on this, not right now, don't worry, because I think that we've got money owed back. I don't know how far we can go back, but I want to look and reach back on this, because this has been going on for years, as you've said, and if you go back, there's an interlocal agreement between all the taxing entities dated 1980, and it's got an automatic renewal clause in it, and I need to have Mr. Mills look at this. I don't know if this interlocal agreement is still in effect or not, but it says that for the taxing unit to refund it back to the appraisal district, to refund any excess back to the taxing entities. Now, where it goes from there, it could decrease our budget. There's our current budget. There's a lot of things that we can do with it, and of course, giving it back to the taxpayers is certainly an option. There's also an auditor's report, the last auditor's report. If you look at the fine print, it talks about that you're supposed to give it back to us. And what I'm seeing is that we've been asleep at the switch a little bit. And I went in there last week and actually went up to, before this appraisal review board, there's 3 of them, that they are appointed by the district judge. And I had a little issue with a piece of property that I've got, and the person who handled my appraisal called me the week before because I marked a little box on there that said, I'll be happy to do an informal discussion if you want. And they set my hearing for last Monday. The week before, he called me, and there was absolutely zero customer service with that person, and there was he dug his heels in, and I said, and I could tell after about 3 minutes of this conversation that I'm wasting my time with this guy. I might as well just come into the hearing. I came into the hearing, and I got hosed by the same guy who gave his pitch, which to a layperson, it looks like a shell game, the way he based his opinion. And then I got the review board rubber stamped what he did. So the first issue here is how many of these protests are being dragged into the appraisal district just because of the corporate culture you've got there? I've got to ask that question because that's a component of how many times you got to see somebody. And by the way, I've had other appraisers over there that I've gone in there and talked with them, and we worked something out. How about I meet you in the middle, or would you accept this? And it's like, sure, just work with me a little bit. So if you look at it, you got your auditor's report that says to give it back to the taxing entities. You got a statute that I just read that says you give it back to the taxing entities, and you've got an interlocal agreement that I believe is still in effect. I'm going to ask Mr. Mills to take a look at that says you give it back to the taxing entities. And somehow that's not happened. I don't think that it's legal, actually, for the board to allocate these fund balance funds to a building. I don't think that's a legal thing you can do. And I'm real interested to see if that's true. I'm real interested to see how far back we can go, because if you go back 5 years, there's about $2.5 million that ended up in fund balance that got rolled into either this building fund or it went into retirement. This building, I can tell you, I've spoken with Dr. Jeremy Glenn over at the school, and they don't even have a deal on the property as far as he knows. And I appreciate, and this is I know you guys went in here a little over a year ago and you walked into this. So I'm laying no dispersion against anybody on this board except maybe the one that was sitting in there when you got in there. So I get that. And so please don't take this anything personal. You guys are in there, you're volunteers, you're in there trying to do a job, and you're trying to grope your way through the process, and I get that. It's not easy, and your job's not easy. Who likes the appraisal district? I haven't met anybody that, oh yeah, I really like that appraisal district. The taxpayers don't like them because they got to go up there, and in my opinion, it's like when I went up there to my hearing, it's like going in to get a wisdom tooth pulled, and they don't give you any Novocaine. They strap you down and pull the wisdom tooth too bad. So getting back to the budget, we talked about that, and Mr. Petrie came in here and started out that he came up with a number of 3,500 appraisals per appraiser. And then I came to that was 2 meetings ago. The last meeting, then I heard 5,500, I heard 7,000, I heard 9,000. I don't know what the numerator and denominator is, because I think it needs to be the same for all it needs to be apples to apples, and I haven't seen that. But this budget has an assistant chief appraiser, which Mr. Fry laid it out for us, and I understand that. The question is, why didn't the current appraiser have somebody in there that he could depend on? You know, why did he not do that? Because that was his job. And then to have him leave or have something happen to him and everybody in there go, it's not my job, then it's rather disconcerting whether you got somebody in there or not as an assistant. I think that if we get a full culture change in there, and I'm talking about somebody that comes in there, a chief appraiser that basically cleans house if he needs to, and get people, that's a customer service facility. That's the people that takes our money. And at least they can do it without having to go up there and get hosed. And I'm bringing that up because I've experienced firsthand. Now, I talked to lots of people that have gone up there and had the same experience, especially with two particular appraisers? Yes. Yes, their reputation precedes them. So, and that, of course, you said it, that's not your job. You're just like a school board. The school board, their job is to hire and fire a superintendent. They don't get to get into the micromanaging. I understand that. But it is their job to hire a superintendent that will take care of issues like this. So I don't know how many applicants have you got now?
Is that a question?
Yes, sir.
Sir, we're interviewing, or we had 8 applicants.
Okay. So, maybe there's hope. I don't know, of course, I haven't seen any of them and stuff, but maybe there's hope there that you can, I know that you're trying to find the right person for the job. And, but what's happened is the appraisal district's getting everybody's attention. And it's on my radar now. And as you can see, it's on this, we're talking about it now. It's going to be talked about tomorrow night at City Council. You're going to be there. And it's going to be talked about in our joint meeting on Wednesday. I think we can all agree that the appraisal district needs some sort of major fix. I mean, you agree with that, right?
I say that we are making the best effort with a new board to make micro changes, and those changes take time.
Okay, but that's not my question. My question was, you agree that we need a major fix, right?
Dave, we're off topic. This agenda item, if you read it, is to discuss and take appropriate actions as it relates to the Hood Central Appraisal District. So my question is, what is it about the appraisal district budget that you would not approve this?
You opened the door to all the other stuff, sir. You opened the door to it. But yet, what do I disapprove of on the budget?
Mr. Eagle, I didn't open the door. I'm just asking a simple question. I didn't want your narrative to be expressed. I'm just asking about the line items that we need to address as a board. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking about our ARB board. I'm not asking about the micromanage. I'm not asking about the chief appraiser. We understand our issues, and we are making those. We are trying to do the best that we can for our county, for each taxing entity, and for the community. But as you know, in government, nothing moves fast. And we are planning to do major changes and make adaptations and see what our deficiencies are, where our problems are, make corrections as we see them. I mean, we can go on and say, how long does it take to build a jail? At what process are you at now? Why hasn't it been built?
Well, we're talking about the appraisal district now.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. What line item? I mean, we can go off in tangents all day long, but I'm asking specifically, point blank, what items of this budget that the board of directors need to consider so that y'all can approve it.
Okay, first of all, fund balance that we've talked about ad nauseum. You need to give us some specific feedback on that.
So the
because
fund
we got
balance,
fund balance from this when y'all did your year end. That's number one. Number two, you've got a deputy chief appraiser. I've got a problem with that. That's a line item. Number three, you've got 10 appraisers listed on here, and I don't think you need 10 appraisers based on if we can get the software, which I would rather see software, hardware, the stuff that's required. According to Mr. Petrie out of Abilene, he said that y'all are doubled. When you send 2 people to do an appraisal, you don't need to do that. Plus, you don't need to do your field notes out in the field. Come back to the office and enter it in. If you've got the technology, you can go out to your site, do your appraisal, enter it into your iPad, push the button, and your appraisal's done when you drive off. So those are issues that I need answers to, me. And as far as having somebody hold the tape measure to bring two people, they got red beams for that. One person can do that, all the measuring. So,
So now I'm going to ask the commissioner that brought this and put this on the agenda, your input.
There's really three things. One is the deputy chief appraiser. I think if you have an employee that's title is Director of Appraisal that's making $96,000 a year, that's been there for 20 years, they should be able to fill that role. So if they can't, that's a different question, but there's that doesn't need to be the taxpayer's problem. So that's my first. The second is I disagree with you on the fund balance when you compare it to the city and the county. This statute says you don't have a fund balance. 6.06 says you don't have a fund balance. If your revenues exceed your expenses, you're required to either credit the district or return the money. The third thing is I don't see in here what I was talking to Mr. Fry about is a cost-benefit analysis, something that shows that you're working towards the software to make you more efficient, that would reduce the number of appraisers or make their jobs more efficient so that you don't need to add appraisers in the future, so that you can get to that number that he was talking about, the high number of appraisals per appraiser. So those are the things that I disagree with.
Those are all internal processes. The legal interpretation of that code is up into interpretation.
Which code? Which code?
The one that you just read.
6.06. Okay.
It's up into, you made that statement. I'm not a lawyer. We're basing our information and our decisions based on legal, all right? The city has a legal attorney, the county has a legal attorney. You can have the county attorney contact the HCAD attorney and they can discuss it. We're basing our decisions based on what we have at hand. When it comes to micromanaging, I don't think anybody likes to be micromanaged, and that's the last thing that I believe that the board of directors want to do when a chief appraiser comes in, evaluates his staff, and makes a determination that whether he needs appraisers or not appraisers, whether he needs a deputy chief appraiser or whether he doesn't. The deputy chief appraiser position has been there. We haven't used it in the past. The only time it's been used when Eddie Rowe was the deputy chief appraiser before he took over for Greg. So that position's been there. The board of directors made a decision to fund that position so that the chief appraiser would have that flexibility. Every organization that I know of has a guy that goes to. If the judge wasn't here, which one of y'all would take over this panel?
Me?
Exactly. So there's somebody that y'all know of that will take over. The judge is not here. At the time that we were in the situation, it was critical for us to have somebody as a deputy chief appraiser. We didn't have that in writing. We didn't have that process, and we didn't have that position at that time. The board of directors can only do so much, but we're not there to micromanage the chief appraiser's staff and what he needs as far as resources. We are there to provide that for him and fight for that for him, just like you are there to fight for the citizens and what the citizens need and what the community needs. As a board, we're doing the same thing. We're fighting for the HCAD staff. This project, this whole entire building project, was in coordination to help the county with the two issues, the appraisal district and the DPS. Now, we can reduce the amount of new building, and we could just consider the HCAD or the renovations of the HCAD. But we wanted to do it in partnership like we've done with other entities. We do in partnership, so it reduces the cost to the citizens and the community. And they have a better facility to bring that to them.
That's debatable. But I want to.
So you're saying the DPS right now that you have is not going to be better if the building is built that we want and we suggested?
DPS is not the county's function.
Okay, but.
It's not our job. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Number two, you just said something that in my opinion, how did we get here? How did we get here? You just said that the board is fighting for the HCAD staff, which I understand that to an extent, but you work for us. You work for the taxing entities. You are our liaison between all the taxing entities and the Hood County Appraisal District. And that's the tail wagging the dog. It's just like, this is what frustrates me with the current public school. Never mind. I'm not going to go off there. But here's the deal. We've told you what we're micromanaging as far as we don't feel like you need 10 appraisers. So there's 2 objections there. And in addition, a deputy chief. So if you disagree with that, that's fine. And if we put it to a vote and pass the resolution to basically not approve your budget, then you're going to have to go back and rethink it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's nothing personal. I sat there two meetings ago and watched one of your board members make a motion to delete the deputy chief appraiser position. And I got a lecture. He got a lecture for that. He got a lecture from one of the other board members and from you. And it was a simple motion. You either second it and vote on it or you don't. You don't need to add a lecture to it, like I'm doing right now, by the way. But we don't have anything for a vote. So right now, we've just got a vote or we're going to talk about approving or not approving your budget as it stands. I've told you my objections to it. I think Commissioner Samuelson's told you her objections to it. And I mean, what else do you need? It's nothing personal. Nothing personal at all. You take it, if we vote to disapprove it, we're just one entity as well. The rest of the entities in the county may say, that's fine, don't worry about it, and we've wasted our time. So, but from what I understand, listening and talking to other taxing entities, including the city, I'm not sure it's going to get there. But that's just, we won't know until each taxing entity just makes a decision on it. And I don't know, I'm speculating here that it may get voted that there's no need to go back with it and everything's fine right here. I'm just one guy. I'm just one person.
Mr. Eagle, are you against growth?
That is such a deflection. That is such a deflection.
Are you against hiring more staff?
You're on the city, right? Y'all are the ones that put a moratorium in. Y'all the ones, let's don't get into this.
Let's stay on the topic. I do have a question. Since you're talking about the chief appraiser, why don't you wait until you get the chief appraiser and let that person decide whether they need a deputy instead of making that decision for them ahead of time?
We're not making that decision for him.
Wait, you have it in the budget.
No, he can hire that person, but he can't hire that person if there's no funding.
Or they could reassign someone who's making $96,000 a year as a
The last thing any entity wants is an amendment to our budget, because it puts you in a bind, because you've already made a budget based on our budget. And if we put an amendment, then you have to amend your budget or figure out how you're going to get that cost back. So
or you can make a recommendation for the next budget year that that person needs a deputy chief.
We plan on hiring this chief appraiser pretty soon. And we want him to have that flexibility to bring somebody on so that he can make those decisions. If he doesn't need it, that'll be taken out of the budget. That'll be returned.
Or address as the motion was at the meeting where you discussed your budget.
But every department
to have
here,
the director of appraisals assume that position at $96,000 a year. Okay, are there any more? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. I'm trying to put some, this is kind of a stupid question. Does the appraisal district actually own properties? Do they have
No.
capital? I mean,
No,
that's,
the appraisal district is different. The only funding we get is from the taxing entities.
yeah, that's.
So we don't levy, and we don't put a tax. We don't get money from the citizens. That's not our budget. We live paycheck to paycheck by the quarter installments that are made by the taxing entities.
That's how it's set up by the statute in the state.
Right,
So-
and that's, yeah,
So-
so the having a capital item strikes me as a little odd. I understand what the situation there is. And to have something for whatever software upgrades or whatever may be coming, that absolutely makes sense to be able to have that budgeted and ready to go if we can find out what that is. And of course, I think we're kind of in a moment of flux right now without a chief appraiser to know what direction we're going to take on anything. And it's kind of a sticky situation.
The whole intention behind that capital outlay is just like anybody else that plans for the future. We're seeing growth just like everybody else. And we're trying to curtail that before it gets here, you know, just like anything else. I mean, we overgrow, and you can't expect something to be overgrown until it gets here. And we are trying to prevent that, just like everybody else is trying to prevent the growth. It's coming.
Right.
It's not an and, if, or but. It's coming. And yes, the city did put a moratorium because Granbury outgrew us so fast. But we're in the process of remediating those things and fixing those things.
Yeah, now, I'm not in any way saying to stand in the way. I think that there are, obviously some efficiency issues that sounds like Mr. Petrie thinks could be addressed, which would remedy some of that situation. And the longer I sit here, I was in construction. Man, when the government builds something, the price of it is ridiculous. It is a harm to the taxpayer what government pays to build buildings. Does DPS have to have a government building to move into? Or can they go into private enterprise somewhere and rent a private building from somebody and let the market work the way that it should without government interference in the deal? And that may not be something you can answer. That's just something that's, I'm kind of opposed to that. I want DPS here. Absolutely, in every way, I want DPS here.
So does everybody else.
But I don't know as though it's definitely not the most efficient way to the taxpayer to have the government build a building that costs 10 times more than it costs to build it in the real world and have them rent that back to DPS. That, I struggle with that. So.
And like I said, that could be taken out of the project.
Well, that's, and then we're still building a building, with government inefficiencies involved. And to use a room for a couple of months, it really seems like this is and I'm sorry, I'm certainly not trying to put you on the spot anyway.
Commissioner
I'm not trying
Andrew,
to be
I mean, these
antagonistic
rooms,
to
we're
you,
not
so.
talking about a huge facility or a conference room like this. We're talking about smaller conference rooms where the appraisers can go in there with the member and talk about the appraisals independently. You see the offices that they have, and I mean, they are butted right next to each other. To try to have a private conversation with the appraiser and the customer, it is hard to do that in that building. So having these smaller conference rooms where they can go in there, make that person feel like he's important and just concentrate on his without the distractions of other appraisers and other people in their offices to use these. We're not talking about a huge conference center. We're not. We're just looking for accommodation for ARBs, whether they're 3-panel or a single panel. The new legislations allow us to have single-panel ARBs, but they have to be separated. They can't be in the same area. So that's another thing. You know, that's another use. So during the process, the entire year, they can use them with the customer as they come in and they want to see their appraisers. They can take them into this private little, small little panel area. That's throughout the year. During the appraisal district, we can open it up. We can modify it where it's only 2 ARB panels, or it's 2 ARB panels, and then a board of directors meeting. We've run into those issues before where there's ARB panels that bleed throughout the evening, and the board of directors has to come in and do a meeting, and we can't do our meeting in the same conference room because there's an ARB going on. We've had instances like that. So we're not talking about a lavish, extravagant, 30,000 square foot, we're talking a really small auditorium that could be broken down into 2 different conference rooms.
Anybody else?
Do you have any more speakers?
Tom?
Did you have any more speakers?
Yes, we do. We have another. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
I appreciate Judge Maskill and the commissioners for your time.
Okay. Elizabeth Mercer.
So I have questions, but just let me say this. As a person who's actually been to the appraisal district and had to have a conversation about how we shut down our business and we had to bring in paperwork and all that, it was a lot of fun sitting in that open cubicle answering those questions because there is no privacy. Just letting you know that. And the other thing is porta potties. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't even understand how you can justify expecting the public to go use a porta potty, but I guess we could all drive extra to the school board thing and use their public bathrooms. But that's just an aside based on the conversations that I've heard, because I don't have a dog in the race, and I don't care how you fund that building or if you fund it. My question is this: if we're going to get a refund, what are you going to do with that money? And the reason I'm asking that is because it seems to me that there's no plan. You're not going to say to me as the taxpayer, I'm going to get this money back, and I'm going to save you money and cut your taxes. Okay, how? Seriously, I want to know how. Because the bottom line for me is this: we are indeed growing. Boy, are we growing. Ask the people in La Pan. And since we are growing, I want to know why that can't be put into a fund and left, or just let them have it. I don't care how you do it, but if you're going to get a refund, why can't you put that in a fund? Because I personally think that the citizens of Texas are going to vote to have our property taxes lowered. I believe that will pass. And I believe that the state will indeed send the money for 2024, because it's an election year, to cover all of the losses that the school districts are about to have. But I don't see that money being there in 2025. So I would like to see that money go to that, because I would like for our school taxes to not be raised. The bottom line is, if you're going to do this, then tell me what you're going to do with that money and how you're going to save me money as a taxpayer and what you're actually going to do to benefit the county. I think it's fair, if you're going to demand that they completely redo their budget, that you tell me how that's going to affect me as you redo yours. And my last question that I hope you'll answer is this: if you don't approve their budget, does that mean you can't go forward with the budget that we have, and the county gets to wait a little bit longer for you to actually fulfill your obligation to approve a budget for the county? I mean, what's happening here? Why is this happening now? The question, how do we get here? It's a really good one, because why are we here now at the end of this process instead of at the beginning? Now, I understand that you need to be auditing and asking these questions. It's a good idea. But now that you've done that, what are you going to do with it? How is it going to impact me? And explain concisely where that money is going to go. Because as everyone up here has pointed out, it's my money. It's everyone's money. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lang? Okay. Anybody else have anything else they wish to say? Any commissioner? If not, do I hear a motion?
Well, just for the reasons stated, I think there are we have an opportunity to work better together with the appraisal district to come up with some options. I don't think there's been an open conversation about what options could possibly be to address the issues of the building at the appraisal district. There are options. I don't think there's been any, sorry to use a cliche, out-of-the-box thinking on ways to address the growth in the number of appraisals per appraiser. I think there's definitely some great ideas that have come forth with the interim chief appraiser. And as I read the statute, we definitely need to ask a lawyer, but the statute's pretty clear to me as far as what happens with the overage. And there hasn't been any discussion in prior years, and here we are today. So with that, and this is long, so bear with me. I don't know if Drew has it. He can put it up on the screen. But the resolution says, Hood County Commissioners Court resolution to disapprove the proposed 2024 budget for the Hood Central Appraisal District and to request the refund of all excess reserve funds collected with any interest earned by the Hood Central Appraisal District from the taxing entities to be distributed back to the original taxing jurisdictions that paid them based on the same percentages as when they were paid. So it starts, whereas Section 6.06 of the Texas Tax Code requires that chief appraiser shall prepare a proposed budget for the operations of the district for following tax year and shall submit copies of each taxing unit participating in the district and the district board of the directors before June 15th. And whereas the chief appraiser shall include in the budget a list showing each proposed position, the proposed salary for each position, all benefits proposed for the position, each proposed capital expenditure, and an estimate of the amount of budget that will be allocated to each taxing unit. And whereas the Hood Central Appraisal District HCAD Board of Directors held a public hearing to consider the budget, and whereas the Hood County Appraisal District Board of Directors completed its hearing, made amendments to the proposed budget, and approved the budget on July 19th, 2023. And whereas if governing bodies of a majority of the taxing units entitled to vote on the appointment of board members adopt resolutions disapproving a budget and file them with the secretary of the board within 30 days after its adoption, the budget does not take effect, and the board shall adopt a new budget within 30 days of the disapproval. And whereas Section 6.06J of the Texas Tax Code provides if the total amount of the payments made or due to be made by taxing units participating in the appraisal district exceeds the amount actually spent or obligated to be spent during the fiscal year for which the payments were made, the chief appraiser shall credit the excess amount against the taxing unit's allocated payments for the following year in proportion to the amount of each unit's budget allocated for the fiscal year for which the payments were made. If a taxing unit that paid its allocated amount is not allocated a portion of the district's budget for the following fiscal year, the chief appraiser shall refund the taxing unit its proportionate share of the excess funds, no later than the 150th day after the end of the fiscal year for which the payments were made. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Hood County Commissioners Court that the Hood Central Appraisal District is hereby notified and informed that the Hood County Commissioners Court disapproves the proposed 2024 budget. And be it further resolved that The HCAD 2022 annual audit identified an excess of funds that have been accumulated by the HCAD totaling $2,312,690, and these funds are hereby requested to be distributed to the taxing jurisdictions in the same proportional share as when they were collected. This resolution shall take effect and be in full force immediately from and after its date of adoption shown below. So I'll make a motion to sign this resolution.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I can ask questions.
It's past the time, sorry.
Well, no, I'm running this meeting. Come on up and talk about it. This is serious. And then, Mr. Mills, I want you to come up here and address this too, okay? I know that you signed up for this and then you passed.
And I didn't have any questions then, but, so this agenda item says discuss and take appropriate action. Usually that means just make a motion, not a resolution. So I don't understand.
Well, it says appropriate action.
Yeah.
That
Does
would-
that-
A
action can be-
resolution is appropriate action?
Yes,
But we
ma'am.
didn't, I mean,
Yes,
was that,
It is appropriate.
okay. But nobody got to read it, we just got to listen to it. We didn't have the opportunity to look at it ahead of time to maybe, I mean, I thought somebody was going to say, I thought the motion was going to be, we will accept theirs or we will deny it, not all this other stuff that was
We have to
part of it.
make the resolution to deny it.
You have to make a resolution to deny their budget request?
You don't have to do it, but this is appropriate. The resolution is appropriate.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Mr. Mills?
Yes, sir.
And then, Mrs. Kidd, I'm going to call upon you to see, the question was raised upon here, that if we do not accept this budget, how is it going to affect the county's budget in voting on it? So be thinking about that, okay? Okay, Mr. Mills,
Yes,
what do you think about this, the legality of this?
I haven't looked at it, nobody's asked me to look at it, I'm in the dark. I mean, I'd be happy to get back with you starting tomorrow or something, but I don't know if I can weigh in. You've already got a motion in a second. I just have, y'all got to give me some time to research. Nobody's asked me ahead of time on this, so I got a punt for now. Sorry.
All right. Okay, Ms. Kidd? What's the effect here about if we reject or accept, well, I guess if we accept, that's part of the budget that we've been looking at for the appraisal district in the county's budget.
So if you reject their budget, will you,
Speak up into the microphone so everybody can hear, please.
if you reject their budget, will you wait for another budget? Will you tell them what you will pay? I need to know moving forward what your plans are and how to proceed.
Yeah, it
Because
says
I
that-
have what they have sent us. I've divided it quarterly by 3 departments.
What's the bill? The amount, please.
600 and
It's
673.
No, it's $802,656. That's their adopted budget for '24.
Okay.
That's already
this-
been budgeted in our '24 budget.
Okay, the number that's on their allocation sheet that they approve with their final budget says 673,000.
I'm looking at one that's adopted for $802,656, so I don't know where the difference is. I don't know why there's a difference.
What's on the,
This is what I received from an email from their adopted budget. That's what I
that's
have.
probably the wrong one. They sent out a corrected one.
And it's
Mr.
less.
Fryer, Mr. Rodriguez, is Becky Kidd
I haven't
correct on that?
I haven't received another one.
The budget I have in possession of.
Come on up to the microphone, please, sir.
The budget that I've got, the latest copy that I've got, says the 802,656. So I think that is correct. So the resolution had amount of $2,300,000, I believe, and I think we're retaining about 1,300,000 and something, I'm not sure. So basically, if you want us to refund $2.3 million proportionately, then our budget will be $1 million down as far as collections. I mean, I may be wrong, but it looks like to me with 2.3 when we're retaining 1.37 something, I believe.
What's that for?
Do what?
What's the 1.3 for?
That's what we actually are retaining as far as that fund of excess funds.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, those funds were actually sent, okay. In 2013, we started, this work we've gone back to, we refunded money. In 2016, there was a retained $259,944, and that was credited to retirement prior service credits. That was to reduce the liability of the district in that retirement fund, and I'm sure Becky can speak to that. You're obligated because of retirements, and they figure in people that leave, and there's some credits you get from the state. But anyway, so they had through 2020, those monies had been taken care of, the unfunded liability we had to the retirement account. In 2021, we had retained earnings of $605,623, and then in the fiscal year 2022, it was a fiscal year for 2021, 2022, we had retained of $332,138. I'm not sure where that 2.3 came from, but I don't think we have $2.3 million in that account. I think it's 1.37 something. I could be wrong, but that's the latest I've seen. So,
Where did you get that from, an audit report?
This is what was sent out when Mr. Petrie sent the revised.
now, is
said
that total funds that we have in the bank, or is that excess funds?
No, I'm talking about the allocation for Hood County. This is the revised budget that Mr. Petrie sent
Right.
out when he said, oops, I got the wrong one. This is the revised one.
Right.
And on the page that says allocated of estimated budget for Hood County's appraisal district, if you look at Hood County, it has $673,491.
I think you may have a copy that he sent out in error.
No, this is
I
the revised one.
And I never got that, so that's why I'm assuming this didn't change.
Yes, there was one that was sent out in error, and he corrected that. And
There was a copy that he sent out early.
Yeah,
and
here it is right here, 673,491 on the one you, this is the one you gave me, 673,491, the same number I have. So where are you getting the 8? Am I just looking in the wrong column or what?
Look on your small detail sheet.
This is, I'm looking at what allocation of estimated budget for Hood County.
This is where Becky. Okay, look across to the end.
But why would it be different?
I don't know.
This is the sheet.
Not sure.
Okay, that's another reason to not adopt a budget if the numbers don't match.
I don't know where that detail sheet's what we were going after. I did, that supplemental sheet that has that 670 something, I can't explain that, I don't know.
Okay, I think there's some.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez, can you shed any light on the disparity there or distinction?
Thank you.
Yeah, some of that budget is operating costs for this year, so you can't consider operating costs for this year included in that budget, in that $2 million, or we won't have an operating budget for the rest of the fiscal year. So when we went through this and they were talking about the capital outlay land and building fund, which is what they're concerned about, they prepared us, the board of directors, a sheet of what actually we have in that line item. And we only have $1.3 million and some change. I can't get you an exact figure. We just say $1.3 million in that fund for this proposed new building or the renovations of the new building. And that's it. Everything else has been obligated, has been spent. So try to get $2 million out of 1.3 is I don't know where you're going to get it, Judge. We're probably just going to have to do an amendment to the budget and ask for additional funds from everybody else to cover the deficit that you're wanting. I just don't know. I don't know the answers to that. But you can't squeeze $2 million out of 1.3. And the remaining amount that we have is to operate for the rest of the year. And you can't take that away from us. So I don't know where she gets the two things that concern me is that the legal opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I don't deal with this type of issue. I go by what my lawyer's saying. The HCAD lawyer representative made a decision, gave us the information. We're allowed to do this. So we're within confinements of our legal advice. I don't know what the legal interpretation from another party is. The city has been involved with it. The city attorney's been communicating with the HCAD attorney. I'd ask that the county attorney reach out to the HCAD attorney.
Who is the HCAD attorney?
Pete Smith. He's not only a HCAD or an appraisal district attorney, he's also a city attorney. He represents other cities.
What's his name?
Pete Smith.
It's Pete. Thought you said Steve.
No. So I would say before the county makes a decision to find out additional information, get the legal interpretation of this law, and also find out the exact figures that y'all want us to, y'all are requesting for us to return. I think those two things need to be solidified before you even consider on finalizing this decision.
That's what you really came.
Okay, so I don't think it's suggested that if there's, I think the whole thing has to do with the fund balance, not your operating. And
most of the fund, our operating budget is part of our fund balance.
that doesn't make sense. What do you mean? I'm talking about the fund balance that was left over from last year and the year before and the year before. You've got an account, and there's also 5 nomenclatures for fund balance. One of them is unallocated. You should have an unallocated fund balance, but however, I realize that y'all have allocated some of that for building, but you weren't given permission to do that by the taxing entities. So there's money somewhere that's misallocated, I would argue, that the taxing entities can ask for, and it doesn't have to all happen in 1 year for that matter, to get it straight, and it would not affect your operating budget at all.
Again, Mr. Eagle, I am not a legal expertise. This is what we've been told. We obligated these funds into a line item, so they're not unfunded.
But you obligated, you're talking about the building.
Yes.
Well, see, I think that's misallocated, so.
But that's a matter of interpretation, Mr. Eagle. I don't know whether it is. All I know is that we are operating within the legal advice of our HCAD attorney.
Well, just let me bring this up, the problem with the timeline. Somebody asked this, I don't remember who it was. You have 30 days to adopt a new budget. So if we put this off, then that impacts our ability to complete our budget. So we really need you to get to work on correcting the things that we've asked and provide a new budget in 30 days so that we can continue on with our deadlines. 30 days from now is September 1st, pretty much. I mean, the end of August, September 1st. That we have to be able to adopt our own budget, knowing where we stand with the appraisal district. So putting this off is going to really impact our ability to adopt a budget. So that's just wanted to bring that up, is why I think it's important that we let you know today that we would like to see a different budget, taking into account some of the things we've mentioned as far as putting some software in there, knowing exactly what you're being in agreement with, what the capital is, not just this fund that's out there in case we might want to do something that you haven't gotten agreement from the taxing entities for.
That's correct, Ms. Anderson. And we haven't spent a dime of that money.
But
And we understand that we need a resolution to be before y'all to spend that money. And that resolution will come before you. And that's why we haven't spent that money. We just put that money aside.
But
A
even
resolution will come for renovations or for a new building or to acquire land. But at this time, we're waiting for a chief appraiser to do all that legwork for us.
what was the resolution that happened in May?
I'd have to get back to you on
Yeah,
that.
there was, as far as I know, we never got a copy of it.
And at that time, we were just, and be honest, the previous chief appraiser wasn't a good representation for the HCAD to make that resolution for us on behalf of us. So we're in the process of making that resolution a little bit more solidified and to bring a better presentation with all the information that is required by law before you. But we haven't made that resolution yet.
I think there was one in May that didn't get any notification to the taxing entities, so that money that was set aside is not set aside properly, and that's what we're asking that you do, which is why we have to take this, I believe we need to take this action today so that you can have time to do that and also give us time to adopt our budget. So I think there was a motion and a motion and a
Let
second.
me just say one other thing before we get started. I think it's a good idea, like you suggested here, like everybody suggested, that the HCAD attorney, which is Pete Smith, and our county attorney, and the city attorney, and who's the school district's attorney on this? Do you know?
I do not know, Judge.
Okay. The four of them need to get together and can do it real quickly. We got 2 weeks before our next,
The 8th.
well, the 8th is when we're going to meet again. I think that things can be worked out by then, hopefully, because I'd like to see our budget get passed on that thing. So would everybody please try to do that? So
I've already had our HCAD attorney reach out to the city attorney. I've already notified our city attorney to reach out to the HCAD attorney. I'd make the recommendation that you ask your county attorney to reach out to our HCAD attorney, and I'll have our HCAD attorney reach out to your county attorney if I'm provided that information of how to reach them.
right, and let's in the meantime find out who the school district attorney is on this particular issue. It may be somebody different than they use for other different things. And the four attorneys get together so that we know what we can and cannot do and to do it legally, okay?
I agree.
Okay, I agree with you, so good, thank you. Now, would
Could
you
I
like
add
to-
one little thing, Judge?
You'd like to restate your motion?
Let me, before she does, so there's 2 points. Number one, the only way it's going to affect our budget is that line item will be a little less if they come back with a smaller number. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's, if
So it doesn't
they
really
come back with the
affect
same
us.
one, then we'll have, if they come back with a lower one, we'll have a little bit extra for fund balance. I'm just trying to be funny here. It went over like a lead brick. And the other one, the resolution about the building and property have specific guidelines that have not been met. That was made by the board, and it has not passed with any of the taxing entities according to statute, with an alternative. I've read that statute pretty intensively. So with that said, you got a motion and a second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not,
One quick question, and I don't even really want to ask this, but a quick question. So with your taxing entities, 2 years from now, everybody decides to, except maybe Hood County, I don't know, to let you build onto your building, renovate it, build a building, and the majority of the taxing entities approve that. Are we on the hook for our whole amount then?
Yes.
Okay.
if not more. Right now, you're at, I want to say 22 or 24% of the obligated HCAD facility. When the legislation finally clears up and the school district's allocations go down, they will go down from 65 to maybe in the low or high 50s, low 60s. So the school's allocation will probably be in the, I'm speculating, will be less than 64%, which means whatever that difference of percentage is going to go to all the other taxing entities. And the next biggest taxing entity is the county.
And
so
we
the
can't-
county will have to pay a little bit more than what they would have been than before.
And we have no choice.
And you have, if all other 10, there's 11 entities, if all other 10 entities approve our building, then y'all are rolled up into that approval as well. Because it takes 3/4 approval for anything for us to do, of all taxing entities. And if we get 3/4 approval for this building, then the county is going to have to pony up their percentage. And it's not going to be just the 20-something% that y'all are doing now. I would anticipate it's going to be higher.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right. Call the vote. All in favor of Commissioner Samuelson made the motion, second by Commissioner Eagle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. All right, before we get into item number V2, discuss matters related to the 2023 budget, may adjourn into executive session. I'm going to call a 10-minute recess at this particular point.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate that.
All right, at 8 minutes to 11, we're back on the record, and we're now to item number 2 under business to be discussed and considered for approval. Discuss matters related to the 2023-2024 budget. May adjourn into executive session as authorized by the Texas Government Code 55.074, personnel matters. All right, we've got 4 people that want to speak right now, so we're going to call those, and the first speaker is Tina Brown.
Wait on Katie.
Katie's not here, so the microphone.
Oh, here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even... I didn't hear what you said. You can come out of line if you want to hear what's going on and then do, but go ahead and tell me what you said. I just didn't.
I just wish y'all would, and I've said this many times, that y'all would discuss it, so there may be questions that we have based on what y'all say. I don't even know what this is about.
Personnel matters, which is why we're going to probably go into executive session. But the whole deal, the item relates to the 2023-24 budget. So if you had any questions regarding the budget,
Well,
you could talk about it.
Well,
I may after y'all talk.
She won't have any questions on the budget because it hasn't been put online as proposed.
Yeah,
Oh,
so we don't
okay.
know what y'all are going to talk about, so can y'all talk first and then let us ask questions?
Well, it's going to be about personnel matters is what
That's it?
they, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Eddie Rodriguez has left the building, so he's not here. Do what? Yeah, well, he signed up to speak on 2.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Elizabeth Mercer?
So when you're saying personnel matters, is this salaries? Because that's my question. If it's salaries, since I have already at least asked questions about the salaries in specific offices for specific duties, I just want to know if you are indeed going to pay $60,000 for an assistant in the county clerk's office, if you're going to pay somebody else additionally. I know everybody else is getting 3% along with the other folks that you have allocated deserve more. But I mean, if, as a taxpayer, since you're spending my money on salaries, I would like to be comfortable that you're spending it appropriately and in a fashion that isn't wasteful. We just had this huge conflab about wasting tax dollars and clawing money back and being responsible. So if you're going to pay salaries to people that I feel truly should not be paid, I'd like to at least know that you're doing that before you vote.
We're
Hence
not going
my
to vote
question.
back in executive session.
I
So we-
understand that, but I mean here.
Yeah, so it would come out here in a public meeting before we actually vote on
Okay.
anything,
That's-
okay?
That was just my one question. Thank you.
Thank you, okay. Next is Katie Lang.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. Since this does have to do with salaries, I would like to request to join you in executive session. I have some questions on my budget. If that's not possible, then I'll continue with my questioning here.
Fine with me for your department.
Well,
I think he said,
well, Mr.
Commissioner
Mills, can you tell, is that legal or not to be?
If we're going to talk about a specific person, we can go back there, if
How about
that's
like
what you want to
Mr.
do.
Yes,
Mills?
sir. Yes, sir.
Is it on a specific person?
Yes, yes, sir.
It is on a specific person?
It's on a specific position,
Mr. Mills,
actually 3 of them.
that's,
I would just say it's the court's prerogative who you bring to executive session or not. I mean, it could be just the 5 of you, and I've seen you bring in, you know.
Miss Kidd.
Well, certainly Ms. Kidd. I've seen you bring in Mr. Sinclair, if you remember that issue that we had a while back with him. Other people that are relevant to the conversation. So, I mean, if you want to bring her back and talk about a specific person, you can, or you don't have to, you know.
Okay, but it should not be brought out on a specific position or a specific person in open court.
Well, sorry. Generally, I mean, you're trying to protect the privacy of a person as a court. But if she wants to say whatever, and she kind of waives the right to that privacy, if you will, and she wants to speak openly in court about a particular person, I feel like she should be able to.
Okay.
So,
Well,
whatever.
that's fine.
I mean, however y'all want to handle that. If you want-
Well, that's, okay. Proceed, and then if you want to address that after she's get through, Ms. Mercer, you're able to do that, okay? All right, go ahead, Ms. Lang.
So you're saying I cannot go to executive session? Is that correct?
No, you can.
yeah.
Okay, then I'll go to executive session with you. Thank you.
Okay, so at 3 minutes to 11, the Commissioners Court is adjourning into executive session. At 19 minutes till 1, we've come back from executive session. Commissioners Court has convened. The budget personnel matters was discussed. No action was taken, and we're hereby adjourning this special called meeting. Thank you all very much for coming.